Today on Locked On Red Wings, Scotty and I are going to bring you some Barry Trotz news as he has interviewed with 5 separate teams, and as well as look at every team remaining in the playoffs and what has made those teams successful as the Red Wings look to take another step forward.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a producer over at 97.1 The Ticket, while Scotty is host also at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And Scotty, today we are going to do a little bit of a mixed bag, a few different topics. The first thing we're going to bring the people today is a little bit of an update on Barry Trotz. I'm sure many people in the Red Wings fan base, well, not just the Red Wings fan base, NHL fan bases everywhere that need a head coach are eagerly awaiting to find out where Barry Trotz is going to land. He is very much so the number one candidate to be hired with his winning track record. And Elliotte Friedman tweeted out, was it yesterday, about how he has
2 days ago, maybe.
Yeah. 2 days ago, maybe, that he has interviewed with 4 teams, the Red Wings believed to be among them, and could also interview with Dallas in the near future, and that almost all of these teams will not go or do any moves, make any moves, until Barry Trotz has made his decision. And that kind of says a lot. Those 5 teams obviously being his hometown of Winnipeg, the ready to win now Vegas Golden Knights, the Philadelphia Flyers, Detroit Red Wings, obviously, and like I said just a moment ago, Dallas Stars possibly in the near future here.
Yeah, so the exact quote from Friedman was, I believe he's spoken to Detroit. Trotz has indicated he will take his time to make sure it's right for him and his family. He won't rush it. He reported that the 3 other teams outside of Detroit, as you said, are Winnipeg, Philly, and Vegas, and then that he might talk to Dallas. And then Friedman wrapped it up by saying several teams, including Detroit, might wait until Trotz decides before hiring a coach. Which is, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it makes sense. It feels weird, like, hearing it, like, oh, wow, like, we're just not going to do anything until one dude decides. And that's, that's reporting very early on in an off season. And if Steve likes a guy, I have no doubt that Steve would kind of just pull a trig there. But that logic does add up and does make quite a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, the real struggle is, and we talked at length, 2 weeks ago now, about Barry Trotz and why he'd be a perfect fit for Detroit. And we hinted at it then, though, as well, that, there would be a hurdle to overcome if you're the Detroit Red Wings in the other teams that are also going to be vying for him. And to have confirmation, and we've known for a while that he has spoken to Winnipeg. And at the time, Peter DeBoer was still the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. But to know now that DeBoer's out and that he has spoken to the Knights, there is very stiff competition for the Detroit Red Wings in those 2 teams. I think they're Red Wings, if you're Barry Trotz, Red Wings are probably the 3rd most appealing team. Obviously, Winnipeg is a team that is very much in a win-now situation. Their window is open. It's his hometown team, so you got to imagine that's going to be the most alluring location for Barry Trotz. And then right after that, the Vegas Golden Knights is an absolutely deep team. They missed the playoffs this year, and you can blame a lot of that on mismanagement from Peter DeBoer and just general management in general. But that is an incredibly deep team, top to the bottom, that is also ready to win now. Made it to the Cup final just a few years ago in 2018. So those 2 teams are going to be tough to out perform. What's the adjective I'm looking for here, Scotty? I'm losing my mind.
Outpersuade, I believe.
Outpersuade.
What
That's
you're trying to say.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it will very much so. And the Red Wings do have a very alluring situation of their own from the aspect of where their rebuild is at. And we spoke about it at length again about 2 weeks ago, where, the Red Wings are in a position where their team is taking a step forward. They have a soon to be Calder champion in Moritz Seider, another exciting rookie in Lucas Raymond.
When is that?
They just announced the Mark Messier Award last night by the time you're listening to this, and they gave it to Anze Kopitar. So the awards are going to begin to trickle out now as we're in the Eastern and Western Conference final. So
I
we'll
want my
find out
unanimous award.
You want your unanimous award. But, the Red Wings also have Simon Edvinsson on the way, as well as, Larkin and Bertuzzi, and you got Nedeljkovic and Sebastian Cossa waiting in the wings as well. So there's a lot of hope in this Red Wings rebuild, and this team is beginning to build up with $35 million of cap space. So there's a lot you can use to persuade a guy like Barry Trotz to come here, but you're also going to have to tell him, we're bringing you in to make this team better, but you're going to have to be patient as well because not all the pieces are at the NHL level yet. Whereas maybe he's like, I want to win a cup now.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely I think the debate there with him. I'm sure he wants to make sure it's the right decision for his family and all that as well. But for the most part, if you have a professional sports team, you're going to set yourself up to a pretty nice town. So obviously that will have something to do with it, but that is the big, I guess, hurdle you would say is you are selling him on the future when he might not want to wait around for a future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the future could be like 2-3 years away, but compare that to Vegas, like
right, with a good coach, right, should have made the playoffs this year if it wasn't for a historic collapse. Like has made the playoffs every year of their existence, like that. You know what I mean? Like for sure, there's a big difference between, like you're not going to be able to convince him, I don't think, unless you have a just ridiculous free agency and he holds out for a long time. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to just like straight up convince him like, hey, we're going for a cup this year. Like I don't think that's going to be in the cards, and I don't expect that to be like part of our like we said, like part of our persuasion. I don't expect that to be a part of it, but there is certainly something to be said for when you look at the core of this team and you look at the farm and everything, that there are very few teams that have set themselves up for the future better than the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and the other two teams too as well. I'm not so worried about Philadelphia is probably the team I'm least worried about. I think Philly's in
correct. They're
really
entering a rebuild. They're about to start. They're like where we were 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
They have a projected cap space of $5 million this offseason coming up. And they're not in a position, man, this year they don't have their second round pick, and next year they don't have their second round pick either. They're in a tough position to bring in a head coach. You're not going to be able to bring in a coach like Barry Trotz right now because this team just isn't ready to compete. Dallas could be an interesting option. I was coming in here about ready to just like spew like Dallas Stars, windows closing, but you look at the closer details, their core is not as old as my brain thought they
young,
were. Yeah, and it's just
they just made the cup the bubble year, right?
Yeah, the bubble year. They got obviously Miro Heiskanen, who's phenomenal, age 22 years old. Mm-hmm. He's just one of the premier defensemen in the league right now. You have Jake Ottinger, who just had a phenomenal postseason as well.
Unreal.
Into a game 7. So a coach like Barry Trotz could very well make them a much better team. For sure. I feel like your main competition again is that Winnipeg and Vegas. And you know what? And he's going to take the time he wants. And when you're Barry Trotz, you have that luxury. Sure.
Like it's encouraging to me that we are, sans Philly, we are the least win now team of all of those, and we're like right in the thick of it. That's even if we don't get them, that at least makes me feel good. I don't know, maybe that's weird, but like that makes me feel good about like our situation. The fact that we're in a situation where we can potentially pry people just on selling the future of the Red Wings, even trumping win now teams like that. That's cool.
I mean, with a general manager like Steve Yzerman, it feels like anything is possible, and I don't mean that even from like a biased sense. It's just he is such
Bobby Ryan, Steve Yzerman.
Yeah, you go back to what Bobby Ryan said the day he signed his contract at the Red Wings. It was all Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman was able to sell him, and I obviously we have our bias, our lens as Red Wings fans, what Steve Yzerman is, but he time and time again continues to impress with what he is capable of doing. Not like I got 100% success rate on free agencies or trades, but
no GM is.
He hasn't had like maybe not all of his trades and trade signings have been wins, but so far none of them have been like straight up losses either.
For sure.
So I've been pretty happy with what Yzerman has done, and that's why, like, even if he doesn't get Trotz, I have full confidence that whoever he does get, there's obviously the a lot of people like, I believe it's Lalonde from Tampa Bay Lightning,
Yep.
which is his last. I believe it was Steve Yzerman's last hire before he left Tampa Bay. People are saying that he is a attractive candidate, but you can't talk to him yet because Tampa Bay is obviously in the Eastern Conference Final.
Right.
And we'll talk about those playoffs coming up next and just what makes those teams so successful as the Red Wings continue their rebuild. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Built Bar. We've been asking, and Built has delivered. Built granola bars are here. Built granola bars come in 3 unbelievable flavors: chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. Want to try all 3 flavors? You can get a mixed box at Built.com right now. These are so different from the bars and the puffs. Built granola bars are loaded with granola. It's the perfect combination of crunch and chewiness. But just like bars and puffs, these babies are packed with protein and covered in 100% real chocolate. So if you've been waiting for a healthy and delicious granola bar to hit the market, this is your time. Head to Built.com right now and get the Built granola bars, 3 delicious flavors to try: chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. Don't miss out. You got to get yours today. Go to Built.com to get Built granola bars now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to transition now into talking a little bit of hockey playoffs, NHL playoffs, as we are in the Eastern and the Western Conference Finals. We had Game 1 of the Avalanche and Edmonton Oilers series on Tuesday, apologies. And that was an absolute just shootout. Actually, the game against Tampa Bay and New York is turning into a bit of a shootout as well, as that game should be wrapping up about now as we record this. Last time I checked, it was 5-2 New York.
Yeah.
6-2
final. The Rangers won, yeah.
Yeah. So we had an 8-6 game yesterday, or Tuesday rather, with the Avalanche and Oilers, and then we had a 6-2 game against the Lightning. I think people expected that out of the Avalanche and Oilers series, but not so much out of the Rangers Lightning, as Vasilevsky and Shesterkin people were expecting to stand on their heads. And Shesterkin had a good game. He only let in 2 goals on 39 shots, but Vasilevsky not so hot.
Yeah, rough game for sure. And playoff hockey is so game by game and so unpredictable. He could stand on his head for the next 4, and it could be a totally different conversation. So, but it is. I mean, that man, like, both series are so fun. I love playoff hockey, man.
Well, it's been an absolute blast, and you look at what makes these teams successful too, and what has gotten these teams to the conference finals, and what the Red Wings as a franchise that's beginning their rebuild, or not beginning, but beginning to build up from the teardown in this rebuild, what they can take away and what they can learn and what they need to do better. One, very apparent goaltending is huge, and Nedeljkovic, can't really. It's hard to be too harsh on him considering the defense that he played behind all season. But he did only have a 900 save percentage.
His rookie eligible year.
Rookie eligible year as well. But he looked solid. He shows signs of, bright spots here and there, flashes of being amazing. He had the 46 shot shutout, and the 1 goal on 47 shots or something insane like that as well. And then when it comes to teams like Edmonton, it's really hard to talk a lot about their successes because their successes just come off the fact that they have the best player in the. So, what helps you be a successful NHL franchise is having the best player in the league on your team. If you're that is one thing. Right. When it comes with Edmonton, it's Draisaitl and McDavid pretty much dragging them in. And to his credit, as much as I hate to say this, Evander Kane has had a really successful postseason as well. Mm-hmm. 3 superstar forwards, 1 being the best player in the league. That is what has made Edmonton successful because no one else on that roster has done anything.
Yeah, it's relatively easy to. I'm not going to say relatively easy. Winning a cup is never easy. Winning playoff series is never easy, but it's a lot different of a strategy when we're talking about what makes these teams good, what has made them so successful in the regular season, what's made them successful in the postseason. It's really easy to just kind of point to Edmonton and go, okay, like top 2 player ever, maybe. That's like a really good and easy place to start. And maybe even finish with Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to kind of rule Edmonton out of this conversation just solely because of the fact that they're dragged to this. They've literally been dragged to the Western Conference Final, rather, due to Connor McDavid and Draisaitl have been doing. They've scored the most goals this playoffs and also allowed the most goals this
Right.
playoffs. So it's like it's almost unfair to be like, what can we take away from Edmonton when they just have the best player in the league?
Yeah. I mean, they got a 40-year-old in net that's had a couple of good games, but as a whole
Been rough.
has kind of played like a 40-year-old in net. Yeah.
I mean, you look at the other three teams in the conference finals in this, NHL playoffs, and they're three much more complete, well-rounded teams. Obviously,
For sure.
The Colorado Avalanche, all of three of these teams have some of the best players on the planet. And I guess really when you come away from you take takeaways away from these teams, obviously having all-star talent like Nathan McKinnon, Igor Shesterkin, Cale Makar, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky is so huge. And so a lot of it seems to be, the rebuild has to go your way. Your signings have to be done right. Your trades have to be done right. And you have to hit that stride at just the right moment.
And I think also a really important thing is hitting on the non like top 3 picks in a draft.
Oh yeah,
Like
Vasilevsky.
like a lot of GMs can be successful taking having a top 3 pick in the draft, just being terrible, having a top 3 pick in the draft and hitting a home run on a talent that everybody knows that you should be taking there at whatever 1, 2, 3 overall. It's the picks outside of that top 3 to 5 range that becomes so much more inconsistent in terms of career success, and hitting on those is in my eyes what makes or breaks a rebuild in most cases. And we've seen it especially with teams like Colorado that have just hit on the draft over and over and over again.
Well, and also you look at those teams, and obviously they have the superstar talent like we just listed, but they also have insane depth, and that's really that's the starting point. That is the starting point for every NHL team that's looking to make the playoffs, is having good depth. Shallow teams don't go far in the playoffs unless you're the Edmonton Oilers. They're a shallow team, but again, best player on the planet right now is on their team, dragging them to the conference finals. But they have a very good roster through and through. The Avalanche, the Rangers, and the Lightning, and that is something that the Red Wings lack. And I mean, you look at guys. So I'm going to look at the Rangers, for example, because they're probably, the most attainable team right now. If I can find, there they go. They got guys. They traded for Andrew Kopp at the trade deadline, who's 27. He's going to be a UFA. Guys like Ryan Strome. They had acquired him via, I believe, through the offseason. I could be mistaken on that one. He played most of his career so far with the that is incorrect by me. But he got drafted by the New York Islanders, and he was struggling to find his place in the NHL, and then he went to the New York Rangers, and being able to hit on those free agents as well, and being able to develop them into what they could be.
Man.
Yeah,
like hitting on free agents is vital in a salary cap sport, because you can't just say, oh well, like Connor Lumsden, move on. Like nope, like that is directly going to affect what you can spend on now going forward. So in salary cap sports, which is everything but baseball, you really have to hit on all of those.
When you look at these teams too, and there's cap situations, obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning are screwed. Their projected cap is negative $2 million.
Yeah, but the other thing is like the cap might not be real.
Oh, the cap very much isn't real.
Cap might be like a unicorn.
You look at these guys and you begin to wonder, which one of these players on which of these teams is going to walk away. The Rangers, they have, quite a bit of cap space. And when I say quite a bit, I mean for a playoff team. They have about $13 million, but they have a plethora of agents they have to sign and a few RFAs as well. Their UFAs currently are Andrew Kopp, Greg McCraig, Tyler Mott, Kevin Rooney, Ryan Strome, and Frank Vetrano. Vetrano and Strome, they both acquired via trade. And I said Strome, they got through free agency. I misspoke on that one. Correction on that one. They got him from a trade last season. But these guys are going to be UFAs. They're going to be paid. They're all under 30 years old. And they're all fantastic players that, especially, Frank Vetrano, Ryan Strome, Andrew Kopp has been phenomenal. Those three guys especially. Yeah. You have to imagine one of those three players is not going to be on the New York Rangers next season. The Red Wings could very much use a guy like that to help shore up, because we've talked about it. Outside that first, line and a half, not even a full two lines, they're a team that really needs depth scoring. And especially starting with a guy like Andrew Kopp, they're not going to pay everyone. It's going to be really hard for them to pay everyone.
They also don't need to. That like New York is this year was ahead of schedule. Like they are a very young team with a lot of talent down there as well. Like a lot of talent in the farm themselves. So they can't pay all of them. You're right, because they have so much young talent that they eventually have to give money to as well. And B, they don't really, they're not handcuffed to, they have to pay those dudes in order to maintain their success. That is a team with a very bright future as well, and is going to be a threat in that conference going forward. So it's absolutely, the Red Wings with $35 million cap, it could absolutely take a threat from one young team to another for sure, because New York isn't handcuffed by, they're not going to sweat if they don't bring all those dudes back.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to imagine a guy like Tyler Mott's probably going to be one of the first guys they let go. He has not been all that great for them. He hasn't been making a lot of money either. He's a good, depth forward, but on a team like the Red Wings who desperately need that depth forward, he, just like Andrew Kopp, are from Michigan. Tyler Mott, I feel like, just based on the cap space that they have left, would be a candidate to get released. In 9 games this season, he did not score a point. And then in the playoffs here, he does have 2 goals in 9 games played. And then Andrew Kopp, as well, is from Ann Arbor, played with the University of Michigan, selected in round 4. It's just, there's a lot of guys. I honestly have no inkling of what the Rangers are going to be doing here in this offseason. And maybe we need to get John Chick from Locked On New York Rangers to come on and talk about their cap situation and who they are going to try and bring back, because they have a lot of free agents and a lot of forwards that I'd be really interested in. And another one that I'd really be interested in is a team that the Tampa Bay Lightning have, and Andre Palat. They're strapped for cash this season coming up, and Andre Palat making $5 million is going to be coming off their books, and I don't see them being able to. I mean, the cap's a lie, but I don't see them being able to re-sign him. 49 points in 77 games played. He's got 8 points in 11 games played so far this postseason. I mean, that's another guy that could very well play up in as high as the second line for a team like the Detroit Red Wings, but could also be a solid third line winger.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is when it comes to the forward core for this team, it is, like you said, depth scoring, just in general, right? Bottom 6 guys that can put the puck in the net, and center depth. Those are like the 2 huge things. I guess that might sound fairly obvious, but they desperately need center depth, and they also desperately need people in the bottom 6 that are more than just like placeholders until we can get the top line back out on the ice. So yeah, the other thing is, with the current status of this roster, like we're going to go through plenty of free agents and do plenty of breakdowns on dudes this offseason leading up to free agency. We're at a place where I'm not sure I'm going to look at anybody who's a UFA and is like good enough to garner like attention as a UFA and be like, oh no, like, yeah, we have 35 million cap and we're like not that good. Like, yes, that anyone that's out there that is getting some sort of spotlight as an unrestricted free agent is going to be an improvement over what we've had the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, and that's what's crazy too, Scotty, is like, I'm looking at these 4 remaining teams. Obviously, Johnny Gaudreau of the Calgary Flames is going to be the prize this offseason. He had an over 100-point season. the Calgary Flames are going to do everything in their power to try and get him to stay, but he's going to be asking
Absolutely.
for the entire checkbook.
It's going to be an electric. It's going to be an electric free agents kind of whatever storyline
I mean,
chase.
let me just go down these UFAs on every single one of these teams real quick. I'll just list them off. Starting with the Colorado Avalanche. The UFAs on forward is Andre Burakovsky. I'd like to have him. He's 27 years old. Darren
Right.
Helm, bring him back. No, I'm just kidding. Nazem Kadri, Valerie Nishkinen. I mean, that's I would like a Josh Manson as well. Over with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I just closed out of that tab, so that's awesome. But they got Andre Palat, as like I said. They also going back to Colorado Avalanche. They had Darcy Kemper, which is a goaltender who's made $4.5 million this past year. He and Francois were kind of splitting the workload. He's going to probably be looking for a little bit of a pay increase. Now, the Avalanche have about $26 million in projected cap space, and so they might bring him back. But I got to imagine with the season that he's had, especially here in the playoffs, with a .921 save percentage during the regular season and his 57 games played, he's going to be looking for a little bit extra money, and they might transition to Francois being the starter. So I don't know if he might be looking for a starter role. I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards for the Red Wings, but they definitely need another goaltender unless they decide to stick with Magnus Hellberg. Again, you go back to those New York Rangers. They also have a crap ton of players who are going to be UFAs. Andrew Kopp, Greg McCraig, Tyler Mott, Kevin Rooney, Ryan Strome, Frank Vetrano. There's so many guys in each one of these playoff caliber teams that you bring over to the Detroit Red Wings, and it instantly improves your roster. I'm not saying every single guy I just listed off is in that category. But
yeah, and
you can compare and contrast the Red Wings roster.
Return too, of course.
Yeah, plenty of them are going to return. Though free agency hasn't hit yet, but just you look at this free agency, and you could miss on Johnny Gaudreau and then sign 2 or 3 guys to decent deals, and this team is instantaneously better, so much deeper.
Right, and that's my point. Like, there's, I find it hard to believe that there's going to be too many people out there that money obviously is going to be the biggest thing, and I don't want to give just anybody like Gaudreau money. Yeah. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm not just saying give max deals to everybody, but the point just being all of these dudes are going to be improvements. Like especially if we're signing depth forwards or we are signing any caliber of defenseman, it's going to be a step forward over what we've had, and they're going to be an addition to the team and a healthy addition. So, like I can't wait to break it down. I can't wait to get way more excited about free agency as we get closer to it. But I can't imagine me going like, oh no, this is a bad fit for the Wings for like anybody. Like we're at a state where we're just looking to bring in any talent we can, and we have 35 million cap. So let's go do it.
Yeah, I'm really excited, like you said, to talk with you later this offseason, maybe starting next week even, about what we think would be the best for the Red Wings. And like I said, the more and more I'm looking at these playoff teams and who they have as unrestricted free agents. Again, you don't know who they're going to bring back, who they're not, but you could build a really solid depth on the Red Wings through the free agency this offseason and also not break the bank. Save yourself maybe for another year for that finisher, that elite talent, if you don't have one already in your own system. So it's just, I'm starting to get kind of excited when thinking about the prospect of free agency coming around this year, because I think this is going to be a year.
For opening night. Let's go. Let's go.
Man, you got any final thoughts on any of this?
I don't think so, man. I'm kind of pulling for McDavid.
I'm pulling for McDavid, but I'm not pulling for the Oilers.
Correct. Yeah, no, same. Yeah, very much.
Thanks for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow as we finish out the week. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day. We ball.
We ball.
That was close.